Welcome to Murder.
And everything else.
My name is Joy.
My name is Cheryl, and Joy and I are two old friends that are going to discuss murder and everything else, but today, mostly murder.
And in case you're worried that someone's getting murdered, that's actually Cheryl's dog that's kind of whimpering in the background. But I said let's leave it because my friend Susan thinks it's great when she can hear the dog whimpering.
Well, Susan, just for you, I'm going to leave him there. And for everybody else, I apologize. But if I put him out of the room, he's going to cry outside the door and you'll still hear it. So, sorry.
Well, let's go over some disclaimers.
Okay. Definitely this murder is not that any murder is for children, but this one particularly because it has like sexual situations. It's very graphic and there's like bondage and BDSM and all this other stuff. So definitely not for children. Just want to say that right now, right up front.
And also, we thought we would have ads by now, but we do not. Not sure when that's going to happen, but we will let you know when it does. And then finally, our music guy is out of town this weekend. So we might not have music for a week, but don't worry, it's not the end of the world. I'm sure he'll figure out a way to add it back in when he gets back. So if you don't hear music and then you hear music, don't worry. It just means he snuck away for a week and then he came back. Well, let's hit up our highs and lows. You wanna go first?
Yeah. So my low is that I did finish my job at the place where I just love my coworkers. So yeah, it was a really sad week for me. Yeah, it was just really rough because I really love those guys. But you never know what's gonna happen maybe back there. But yeah, so that was really rough because I really enjoy the people that I work with, and yeah, that was really really hard. And my high, I have to like search for one. No, actually, my husband and I have gotten into that show, that reality show. It's a cross between like a somewhat of a Squid Game and Gladiator. It's a Korean show called Physical 100 on Netflix. And we're on, I think, the 5 or 6 episode, and we're watching it today, and I told Kevin, I said, these guys, they remind me of my brothers. Like, my brothers are really in shape, and they're still in shape. Like, my oldest brother is in his 60s, and they have like zero body fat, and they're all in shape. But they're, I know these are my brothers, but they are just these good looking Asian men who are really in shape. And so, I'm watching this show and I'm like, there was a time, remember way back when they had to get a Caucasian person to play an Asian on TV and they'd like make their eyes squinty.
Yeah, like in MASH.
In what?
In that show MASH. They used all different ethnicities, but a lot of those people were I believe a lot of those people were Native American or Hispanic.
Yeah, and there's one like I can't remember what it was, Green Hornet, I don't know, or Pink Panther, I don't know what it was, but back in the day, like especially for the males, like Asian males were portrayed as these nerds, right? They always stereotyped Asian people as just being the nerdy people with the round, with the, what do they call it? Those round horn rim glasses with the tape.
Like, remember Long Dong from 16 Candles? Giant nerd.
Mm-hmm. And they always portrayed them that way. And I was sitting there watching it, knowing like the success of Squid Game and how it was at that time the highest watched show on Netflix. And it's by everyone, not just Asians. And so I that was my high, because I was sitting there going, well, I've thought about this actually years ago, but in my memory, around the Joy Luck Club time, and then Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and House of Daggers, all of that came out, and it was like Asians became cool in everybody else's eyes. We know we were cool, but you know what I mean? Like, I think it took a turn in Hollywood. And so it's just, I just love now seeing like, that we're not stereotyped anymore. We're definitely not stereotyped anymore. We've broken out of that a while ago, but I just wanted to mention that. It's just really nice. Like, leading men, Asian men can be leading men, you know,
Yeah.
because
Look at
my
Henry
brother,
Golding and
yeah.
look at Jason Momoa. Hubba hubba. I
Well,
know
he's not.
I
What is it? He's Hawaiian or
I
something,
know
right?
I mentioned Jason Momoa more than once in this podcast. I'm just saying. Whew,
Dude, you always he comes up in everything we talk about. But there's
yeah.
somebody else I can't think of. That guy Daniel something Kim, the one on he was
Oh,
on
Daniel
Lost.
Day Kim. He was in Always Be My Maybe, or maybe Always Be My. I
I
don't
think
remember
that's
that.
but his cheekbones,
It's in
holy
Lost.
crap. Anyway, it was just my high because I was like, I'm so glad that that's taken a turn. We have a long ways to go with racism for all races, but we definitely have turned that leaf over from the days where um, Asians were just portrayed as these nerdy people. So
Henry Golding plays the role of Mr. Elliot in the new Persuasion remake on Netflix with Dakota Johnson. And I have to say, he is, for those of you who don't know, Mr. Elliot plays something of a rake. And I have to say, Henry Golding is the sexiest rake I've ever seen in that role. And I know my period pieces, and he is dropped in gorgeous. And for those of you who the name doesn't ring a bell, he played the main character of the guy who's getting married, who's engaged on Crazy Rich Asians. Very attractive.
yeah, look him up. What's a rake?
A rake, it's like a naughty, like a bad boy who like breaks women's hearts and like takes advantage and like lies and connives,
I have never heard that term. Where have I been?
Oh yeah, it's very Jane Austen-y.
Oh, okay. Say no more, please. No. Okay, what's your high and low?
So I'm gonna start with my low. Um, so last night I came home and I didn't want to cook anything to eat. So so my way of dealing with this is sometimes I'll just eat a sandwich if I don't want to cook something, but I knew my nephew was coming into town. So I made some macaroni and cheese out of the box, but like not the small box, like, the family size box because it's longer. And so I ate a bowl of macaroni and cheese, but the only way I can really eat it is with a healthy dose of Tabasco on it. So I
Mm-hmm.
ate that. And then this morning when I got it for breakfast, I didn't really want to cook anything. So I ate a bowl of macaroni and cheese with Tabasco on it. And then
On
for
an
lunch, I decided I would just finish off the rest of that mac and cheese with some Tabasco on it. And so all afternoon, as we sat through, because we went to go see a musical this afternoon, my stomach was hurting, but not like it was like cramping, hurting, like real bad Tabasco cramps. And then my high for the week was I bought these really cute shoes when I went shopping after Christmas. I bought them not knowing what I would wear them with because they didn't really go with anything that I had. And I tried them on with several different things before we went to the musical today. But then I settled on like a little pair of like stretchy capri pants and like a white linen top that was like kind of like voluminous and like a little black cardigan. And then I wore the new shoes. So every time I looked down at my feet, I had those new shoes on and they just made me feel like a million goddamn dollars.
What do they look like? Describe it.
Oh my God. So they're a burgundy, like a really good, like wine color. And they have a gold buckle and they're sling back They're
Mm.
easily to 4 to 5 inches,
Oh
but
my God.
but it's a platform. So the heel, it might be 4.5 to 5 inches, but the front of the shoe is easily half that. So like 2.5 to 3. So you don't feel like you're really wearing high heels because your whole foot is elevated. But they make me approximately 5'7.5", 5'8". So I feel like
Yeah.
a tall person when I'm wearing them. And oh, and they're covered toe because they're slingback. They're just so comfortable and they're so cute and they're not super clumpy. Yeah, and they make me
Can't
taller.
Lady Gaga.
That's right. So
Yeah,
anyway,
I
every time I looked down, I saw these new shoes. And I just felt like, oh, like you just can't go wrong when you're looking down at like a new pair of shoes. They'll never be new again. Every time I wear them, I still like them, but I can tell you that the shelf life of a pair of shoes, it literally the clock starts ticking when I put them on for the first time. I will probably have to sell these shoes in about a year.
mhm.
So yeah. But anyway, that's my high. I
Oh,
can't tell you
that's sweet.
how exciting it is to put on a new pair of shoes and showcase them. I took them out on the town. Took them to
Yeah, that's
downtown Durham. Like, damn girl, I was like, woohoo.
yeah, sometimes it's the smallest thing, like a full bottle of shampoo.
That's right. All right. So I do have to make some shout outs this week.
Go
Um,
for it.
this shout out, it's a shout out. This week's shout out goes to Chris in Portland. You know who you are. Thank you for listening to our podcast from last week on type 2 diabetes, weight loss, and Ozempic. And thanks for reaching out via Facebook Messenger regarding last week's podcast. Good luck to you. And hey, just keep on keeping on. I
Awesome.
love, love, love when people reach out and give feedback or give us comments or ask questions. So, yeah, I mean, there are multiple ways to do that. You can do it through Anchor, which is our podcast platform. You can do it through any other platform that you get your podcasts on, the most popular being Spotify. But yeah, we relish questions, comments, etc. Good ones. All
Yeah,
right.
that was great, especially because she could relate to it. That was really awesome.
Yeah. And I used to work with Chris before I met you at the some the family owned and operated Ponzi scheme is what I like to call it.
I'm not making any comments about that.
All right. But anyway, without further ado, we should get into our topic. And Cheryl's going to be um, really jumping in with both feet on this one. I can't wait.
Yeah, so this is, I'm going to call it the unresolved murder of Robert Wone because it's pretty clear who had a hand in it or the people that did. And it's very frustrating and very sad that no one has been brought to justice for his murder. In the true crime community, this is one of those that's kind of gone on under the radar, right? You hadn't heard of him, but it's one of those cases that it really should still be looked into, but I don't think I think it's just a cold case now. But one of the podcasts I listened to today about it, they equated it to the John Benet Ramsey murder and some of these high profile murders. And I'll tell you why at the end I think might have kind of been swept under the rug. But Robert Eric Wan was born on June 1st, 1974. He was a fourth generation Chinese American born in New York City. He was 32 at the time of his murder. To describe Robert as promising is an understatement. He was excellent. He was an excellent student as a kid. He and his father loved baseball, and even though he was small for his age, he really tried as hard as he could to play it. He had a passion for politics at a young age. One day when Robert was 15, Chuck Schumer knocked on his door. Schumer was campaigning for re-election to the House of Representatives. Robert was so excited that he volunteered to knock on doors with Schumer. A few
Oh,
summers later, he worked for then Governor Mario Cuomo. This
that's so
guy,
cool.
I have to talk about his character before I go into the tragedy of this, so that I mean, we really lost someone who's going to contribute, who was contributing to society and who would have continued. He just sounded like an incredible guy. Listen to this. He would put change into expired parking meters as he walked down the street so that no one would get a ticket. And when funds ran out for campus beautification, he bought sod for the quad. And a friend says of him, when other kids were getting drunk on Saturday night, he was laying down new sod. When the sculpture of a phoenix on campus was coated in bird droppings, he and some friends went out one night and scrubbed it clean.
Hmm.
Throughout throughout his life, he excelled at school and was dedicated to his community. He was highly involved in volunteerism and humanitarian organizations. He received several awards and accolades for excellence of character. He graduated from William and Mary College and went on to law school. He passed the bar exam in New York. While at William and Mary, he met Joe Price. Remember that name? They became lifelong friends. Joe was sort of his mentor. I think he's about 5 years older than Robert. And at the time when Robert came to check out the college, Joe was the one that gave Robert and his parents a tour, and they just remained friends after that. Robert began working for a law firm in Washington, D.C. He chose the law firm because they did a lot of pro bono work and he wanted to give back to the community. In 2002, he met and fell in love with Catherine Yu. They married in June of 2003. And in 2004, they moved to Oakton, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C., where they both worked. Robert then left his job at the law firm to work for Radio Free Asia, which is a nonprofit that broadcasts news and information to Asian countries. He started studying international communications law to get ahead. He loved the work and the staff. On the morning of Wednesday, August 2nd, which is my birthday, it's just so weird. Remember the Idaho murders were on your birthday, November 13th, and it's just a really weird feeling to see your birthday out there.
Wait, what
Um,
year is this?
2006.
Okay.
On the morning of Wednesday, August 2nd, 2006, Robert kissed his wife Kathy goodbye for the last time. A few weeks prior, Robert planned to visit the overnight crew, and rather than making the trip back home late at night only to wake up early the next morning to go to work, he decided to stay in Washington for the night. He asked a female friend first if he could stay with her. I don't know what the reason was, but she declined. And then he contacted his old friend, Joe Price, his good friend from college, and he made plans to stay with Joe that night. Um, Joe owned a house. It's a row house in DC, which he shared with his domestic partner, Victor Zaborski, and a third roommate, Dylan Ward. And so from here, I'm just going to refer to them as their first names. Hold on one second. Okay. And then, so Joe was in a relationship with Victor for over 10 years, and he had a sexual relationship with Dylan too. So the three of them lived in the house.
So they
Um,
were in a throuple.
yeah. Yep. Joe was also a highly successful, ambitious attorney. He gave back to the community and did most of his advocacy work in the LGBTQ plus community. Joe also had a tenant in the house. Her name was Sarah Morgan. She rented his basement apartment that I've heard different accounts of it, but it supposedly had its own entrance. So on that night, Robert called Kathy around 9:30 p.m. to let her know he was leaving work and headed to Joe's at 1509 Swan Street. Robert arrived at Joe's around 10:30 p.m. What happened during the next 79 minutes remains unknown to any of remains unknown to any but those in the house. At 11:49 p.m., a 911 call is placed from Joe's townhouse. Victor makes the call. During the call, the 911 operator mistakes him for a woman and she never corrects it. I don't know if she never realizes that it's a man. But Victor is hysterical and the operator asks a series of questions like, is the person breathing? Are they unconscious? He says he doesn't know because he is on the upper floor. He says the person is downstairs. He never names Robert by name. He just says the person is downstairs. He says someone has come in and stabbed their house guest. He says they heard the door chimes. He's not sure if the intruder is in the house. Victor says the person has been stabbed in the heart. The operator is directing him to get a towel, hold the towel on the wound, apply pressure, get another towel if that one becomes saturated.
Wait,
Eh,
how would he know that the guy had been stabbed in the heart if he was upstairs and the victim was downstairs?
well, I'll get to what they claim happened that night. And
Okay.
in this 911 call, you can hear him giving someone the directions that he's being given. However, like when I'm listening to it, Robert's body is on the floor below and he's not shouting on the 911 call. So I don't know how he's giving the person that's with Robert these directions. A lot of it's very, very troubling. So around midnight, Joe calls Kathy to tell her that Robert has been taken to the hospital. He had been stabbed. Kathy freaks out. She rushes to the hospital. Robert's parents and brother are already there, and it's too late. Robert is pronounced dead at 12:25 a.m. I did read that he actually flatlined at the townhouse, but that's when they actually called it, called his death.
Right.
Paramedics had arrived 6 minutes after the 911 call was placed. Victor was wearing a white robe. The paramedics were trying to ask him questions. Victor was unintelligible because he was hysterical, but then he just ignored them. The paramedics then went upstairs and saw Dylan in the hallway, also in a white robe, and they just showered. Dylan didn't speak to the paramedics to help them either. He went to his room and shut the door. Can you imagine that? There's a guy stabbed, and you're just going to go in your room.
Weird.
Robert was in the guest room, lying on his back on a pull-out sofa on top of the covers. He was wearing a gray T-shirt. I heard it was his William and Mary College T-shirt and gym shorts, and he was wearing his, the night guard to keep you from grinding your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Joe was sitting on the edge of the bed, only wearing white briefs. He also looked like he had just showered.
Huh.
Paramedics observed that Joe had not followed the 911 operator's instructions. He was just sitting on the edge of the bed, not doing anything. So he wasn't compressing the towel on to Robert. Paramedics found all of the men's behavior very odd. One of them was so suspicious of Joe that he kept his eye on him the whole time to make sure he didn't have a weapon or a knife. Like he went around the bed, like he didn't want to go past him. He wanted to keep Joe in his, sight line the whole time. They turned their attention to Robert, who had been stabbed in the chest 3 times, once right through the heart. Jeffrey Baker, an emergency medical services worker for more than 10 years, had seen dozens of crime scenes with people screaming and blood everywhere. Here there was quiet, 3 men looking freshly showered, and a victim with 3 stab wounds but little blood. The scene made the hair on the back of their necks stand up. The second paramedic, Tracy Weaver, a 15-year EMS veteran, said that things in the house were very wrong. For the size of the wound, there should have been blood everywhere and blood on Robert. Police arrive and take Joe, Dylan, and Victor to the station to question them. Once they are at the station, they are put into separate rooms. They are questioned individually for hours. The police use interrogation tactics to try to get them to turn on each other, like, well, so and so is saying that you did, they're just lying to them, but they keep to their story, which is the same story,
Hmm.
which is that all 3 of them said that an intruder broke in and stabbed Robert. They heard Robert like a low scream moan, and by the time they called 911, the intruder was gone. According to Joe and Dylan, they were in the kitchen with Robert when he first got there at 10:30 p.m. He had some water and they showed him to the guest room. Victor said he was alone in his room watching TV. Dylan's bedroom was on the second floor with the guest room, so he's on the same floor that Robert's the bedroom is. He said he took a sleeping pill around 11 p.m. He heard Robert taking a shower before he fell asleep. Joe and Victor shared a bedroom on the third floor. They went to bed around 11 p.m. Sometime before 11:45 p.m., someone opened the back door. This is their account, their story that they're telling the police. Sometime before 11:45 p.m., someone opened the back door. Joe was woken up by the chiming sounds that the security system made when doors were opened. The roommate in the basement, Sarah, said she was going to be out all night, but he assumed she must have returned early. But I read she had her own separate entrance to her basement apartment, so why would the door chimes go off in the main house? Joe and Victor say they hear two distinct sounds, not screams, but low guttural moans. They went downstairs to check, saw that the guest bedroom door was open. They discovered Robert has been stabbed. They say the knife was on top of Robert, and then Joe puts the knife on top of the nightstand to try to help Robert. Joe makes it a point to tell the police, "This is the reason you might find my fingerprints on the knife." Like he's like preempting anything they might think, you know? And then he also goes on to tell them, "You're probably not going to find the killer's fingerprints because he probably wore gloves," which is just so bizarre to tell the police when your friend has just been killed. You know, it's really, by their combined accounts, someone had stabbed Robert and left the house. They did not explain who cleaned the room of blood, washed the body, discarded the murder weapon, disposed of the bloody towels or sheets, and changed the bedding in 45 minutes. Joe had earlier told a detective he found Robert's body near the patio door and carried him to the guest room. He told a detective that, and then he never repeated that again. He went with the story that he and Victor ran downstairs and they found Robert in the bed, but at first he told someone that he found Robert's body near the patio door and carried him in. Like
Interesting.
you can't get those two things mixed up. I don't understand. You know, they're not even close.
Right.
Um, Forensic experts conclude that the knife on the nightstand was not the murder weapon. It had Robert's blood on the blade, but it was too long for the wounds that he had. It had a 5.5-inch blade, and his wounds were 4 to 5 inches deep. A white towel was found on the ground with spots of blood on it. I'm talking like little tiny spots. There were fibers on the knife that matched the towel, but no fibers from Robert's t shirt, meaning the knife did not go through Robert's t shirt, meaning this can't be the knife, right? Because if you're stabbing him, you would have had fibers from his shirt. And it only
Right.
has fibers from the towel, which makes it look like somebody took the blood and wiped it onto the knife to make it seem like this is the murder weapon.
Oh, interesting.
The knife came from the cutlery set in the kitchen. There was a knife missing from the set in Dylan's room, a cutlery set, and one of the knives was missing. The actual murder weapon has never been found. Only a single vial of blood was recovered from the scene, from the two small spots on the bed. Robert's body had been washed and he had been redressed, and the sheets had been changed. Victor said when he found Robert, he lifted up his shirt and saw a lot of blood on his stomach, but when the paramedics got there, his t shirt was down and his t shirt and stomach were clean. Victor told the 911 operator that someone was applying pressure to Robert's wounds, but if that were true, there would have been a lot of blood. There were only a few drops of blood on that one white towel. No other bloody towels or rags were found in the house. He had 4 to 5 inch stab wounds. There would have been a lot of blood. I've heard some people on podcasts and in reading say that it's a possibility that the blood went inward and was
That's
filling
what
up
I
his.
was thinking. That's what I was wondering.
They said it's possible. I don't know. The medical, get this, the medical examiner, besides the stab wounds, found multiple needle puncture marks on the left side of Robert's neck, 3 puncture marks in the center of his chest, and 2 needle punctures to the upper portion of his right foot, and 1 needle puncture mark on the back of his left hand. There was also some petechial hemorrhaging in his right eye, which is, it's like a bursting of the vessels in the eye, and it's probably from being strangled or suffocated.
So, could the puncture wounds be from like what kind of puncture were they, like acupressure needles? Were they like ice pick punctures? Like what kind of
I have no idea. And they've never said, in all the research I've done, you would think Kathy, his wife, would know something about that, right? If he was, accustomed to getting acupuncture treatments or anything, but
Mm.
there's no reports on that. It's just a very, very suspicious detail. Robert's body showed no defensive wounds and no sign of struggle. There was little to no blood on his hands, indicating that he did not clutch his hands to his chest at the time of or immediately after the attack, as would be a natural human response if one were conscious, not incapacitated. There were only two spots of blood on the bed. The forensic pathologist opined that the three stab wounds were inflicted while the victim was incapacitated. Because I heard on the podcast today that each, and I actually read it too, that each knife wound was exactly the same depth and exactly the same angle. Now, the first time you stab someone, they are not going to stay still. So it kind of is like indicates that he was not moving at all when someone stabbed him those three times, because they were perfectly the same. They were clean stabs and they were exact same angle.
Interesting.
The other thing that was found on Robert was semen found on and around his genitals, on and in his anus, and it was his semen. No one else's DNA was found. It was Robert's semen found on and around his genitals, on his anus, and in his rectum. The
Wow.
cadaver dog the cadaver dog alerted on the rear stairwell drain and the lint filter of the clothes dryer, suggesting that bloody clothing or items were cleaned off in the backyard stairwell and then placed in the clothes dryer to dry. The detectives saw that the hose had been uncoiled and left, in the backyard, and their house was immaculate. They were rich to have a row house in DC, so everything was in order. So they saw this water hose that had been stretched out and not put back, and then there was a cover to a drain that was askew. Prosecutors also assert that the housemates had delayed their call to 911 for as little as 19 minutes or as many as 49 minutes, because we really don't know what happened, right? From when he actually arrived. This is what they're telling the police. Police also recovered implements of sexual bondage and torture from Dylan's room. There were books relating to inflicting pain on others for purposes of sexual gratification. Many of these books contain passages highlighted by the reader. It is also rumored Dylan liked male Asian porn. Among the most troubling aspects of the case are the many mistakes made during the initial investigation. Police technicians botched the crime scene. They incorrectly used um, a an agent called Ashley's reagent, and it's like like they have luminol, but it's something else, and it's supposed to detect blood. They used it incorrectly, and the prosecutors would not be able to use the results, even though there was blood detected in the house on the floors, I guess. Toxicology reports were discarded. The Secret Service, which is in charge of the government's mobile devices, failed to preserve the data on Robert's Blackberry. And two emails he allegedly sent while he was at Swan Street were later erased. Actually, he didn't send them. So they found on his Blackberry that he had composed email to his wife Kathy, and I think one to his coworker. I can't remember, or his manager or friend, but it was another person. But they weren't sent. They were just in his draft, and so there's some speculation that someone went and did that after he was killed to like throw the scent off. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know. I guess the time. I guess it would be like the time that he would have composed it, and put up against the time that he died and all of this. But no one will know except those three people. On November 19, 2008, the government indicted Joe, Victor, and Dylan for obstruction of justice. On November 25th, Robert's wife, Kathy, filed a $20 million four-count wrongful death suit against the three, Joe, Victor, and Dylan, and they agreed to an out-of-court settlement with her. The evidence suggests that rather than administering aid to Robert or making a prompt report to authorities, defendants spent the crucial minutes after the stabbing coordinating their stories, altering and orchestrating the crime scene, and destroying evidence. Did Robert spend the night at Swan Street knowing he might participate in his host's extreme sexual practices? Everyone is making the supposition that there could have been some degree of consent, that it would fill a lot of missing pieces of the puzzle. But what everyone knows about Robert, and by all evidence from within and without the gay community, it does not support that. So there's just a lot of speculation about whether he was gay or he was straight, or he went there knowing that they were going to have some kind of tryst. For me, it doesn't matter. He's dead and no one's being held accountable. The prosecution's theory was that Juan was drugged and then forced to ejaculate via e-stem. This is the first time I'm hearing about this, but it's some type of what they call a milking device, and it can bring someone to ejaculate even if they're unconscious. So they don't even have to participate in it. It will make them ejaculate. And remember, his own semen was found on him, right? Sometime toward the end of that sexual assault, Juan was stabbed with a kitchen knife and left to die. Not enough evidence for a murder charge. There was not enough evidence for a murder charge. And I think they wanted to stay away from the sexual components of the case. There's also some talk about not wanting to, not just the sexual component, but the homosexual component. Like they just wanted to stay away from that for whatever reason. So the
Right.
prosecution charged them only with tampering and obstruction of justice. They were acquitted of the charges in June of 2010, and the judge felt they were involved or knew what happened, but there was not enough evidence to say which one of them or which one of them did it. And where are they now? Joe Price changed his last name to Anderson. Dylan Ward changed his last name to Thomas. As of 2016, that's the latest I could find, Joe and Victor moved to Miami. Joe is still practicing law, and Dylan is a massage therapist and Pilates instructor. And that's it. I wanted to talk about it and bring awareness to people because there are so many cases that go under the radar that are just truly heartbreaking. This was just a stand-up guy, and I don't care what his sexual preference is. You know what I mean? I mean, I would feel bad for Kathy if she was doing this behind his back. But the thing is, when he planned, he knew he was going to stay late, and so he planned it a week ahead. He called a female friend first, and she, for whatever reason, said that he couldn't stay with her. So it kind of negates the whole theory of, oh, he went to Joe's to be in some kind of sexual tryst. But regardless, again, I say, who cares? If he went there to have some kind of sexual thing with them, doesn't matter. He ends up dead and no one is held accountable. It's incredible. Incredible. And these guys are saying, we went to bed. Dylan's like, I took a sleeping pill and went to bed. Joe and Victor are like, we were watching Project Runway or whatever, and we went to bed. And then you're found all freshly showered. So that's bullshit. You said you went to bed, and then the police come, and you're in, you look freshly showered, and everything's clean. And I don't know if I believe. I mean, I guess the blood can go inward, but what's this thing about Joe saying he found Robert's body by the patio door, and then saying that we found him on the bed? Anyway, I just wanted to bring this to light because I'm sure there's a lot of cases out there that don't have a lot of media coverage, but they deserve, you know, just as much attention as the ones that do. Um, yeah, because I think it's heartbreaking. He sounds like a great guy. He was really in love with his wife, and those guys, I don't know how they can live with. This is their friend. This is their friend. Like, how can you go on? And that's probably what's going to happen. That's the only way they're going to find that we're going to find out what happened is somebody's conscience, gets to them before they die or something. I don't know, but they're just
Right.
off being scot free.
I mean, I will say that because of finding, okay, so obviously his friend Joe was involved in a throuple. So there was that, which is not, I'm not saying that people can't be involved in thruples. It's just not usually, um, I don't know, at their ages, I think that was probably more of like maybe a kink. Obviously, it didn't last because Joe and his partner moved away to Florida, and they didn't move away as a throuple. They just moved away as a couple. But I wonder if there was more to the relationship and Robert stayed with Joe, and maybe there was some, I don't know. Maybe he walked in and there was some sexual activity that like he, walked in and or maybe he agreed to participate in something and got carried away. I mean, I tend to think that's more of what happened, that maybe he, had maybe done some activity with this Joe guy before, when we met him in college,
Mhm.
and things got carried away, and next thing it went too far. But the weird thing is all the cleaning.
Yeah.
It's like, how much cleaning did they have to do?
Yeah. And see, the timeline that they give, it could be all bogus. Like I don't even know I don't know how they know he arrived at 10:30. I know he called Kathy at 9:30 when he was leaving the office and headed over to Joe's. My impression was that it was not that far from where he was, but he arrives there at 10:30 and this goes down so fast. Like we don't know if it went down within the first 10 minutes of him being there. All we know is that an hour and 19 minutes later the 911 call is placed. But um yeah, so I've heard, so the podcast I listened to today did one of the it's two guys and they were giving their theories and one of them said, I think it's possible that, like you just said, Robert and Joe might have had something. He was his mentor, and maybe something happened, and I don't know. Everything I've read, you tell me if this is weird or not, okay? Because one of the guys' theories today that I listened to was that they think they put something in his water. And the other guy was like, "Well, why wouldn't they just, offer him wine or something like that?" And the guy was like, "Because water is simpler, right? Like if you don't feel like having alcohol, then there goes your root, your ruse to give him something to knock him out. But water would be more, because everything I read and it stuck out to me. I was like, why did they make it such a point to mention that they were all sipping because that they were all drinking water or that they gave Robert water? I found it a really strange detail. Like if if I were recounting an event, I would be like, yeah, Joy came over and we talked for a little bit and then she went to bed. I don't know, it'd be like Joy came over and I gave her a glass of water. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
Joy came over and we sat around the kitchen and we drank some water. It's just stands out to me as being very strange that they made it a point to say that. It's just really weird to me, but I don't know. I don't do you think um that he could have been drugged? I mean, that's what the needle marks were, and then I don't know why they were,
Well,
and then someone had their way with him.
I think what happened was, okay, so I think that he didn't get there that late. When he called Kathy, he probably was there. Um, and honestly, I think that there was more to what was happening with his relationship with Joe than he let on. And I think that maybe things got carried away and maybe he had a cardiac arrest. Cause like it sounds to me like maybe he engaged in some recreational drug usage, or maybe they did some bondage stuff and he's just strangled, or maybe he asphyxiated, or or maybe he had a heart attack or something. And then they had to use that hour and 45 minutes before that, you know what I mean, to like turn it into making it look like something else, because
Yeah,
it's clearly not, they
an
clearly,
intruder.
exactly. Also, like, I thought about the thing where you said that there was a tenant in the basement, but you can have alarm system put in place where every door or window that opens in your domicile will trigger the alarm or a beep. Like it'll be like back door open, basement door open, garage door open. Because I've heard people's homes do this, And so even if he had a basement tenant, it would have said, basement door
Mm.
open. Even if she had her own entrance or exit, it could have triggered the alarm. But for whatever reason, I don't, because if you called and said, I could call, and say, I'm leaving work now and actually be down the street at the shoe store trying on shoes.
Hmm.
You There have been plenty of times where like I'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna leave here in a second, and then 3 hours later I show up and Gabe's
With
like,
shoes.
where were you? And I'm like, well, I walked into this other store just for like a minute to get something, and then I found the shoe department. And then he's all right, I don't even have to explain to him what happened after that. He's like, okay. It's like,
I stumbled onto the shoe department by pure accident.
so he could have been there from, because the first thing that honestly, when you were reading through the details, the first thing that struck me as odd was who leaves work at 9 o'clock at night? Like, I'm sorry. I
Well,
don't care
he
how much you love your job. I'm not leaving no work at 9 o'clock at night.
well, he says that there was a night crew at the radio station, an overnight crew, and he wanted to meet them. So that's what he said. But yeah, we're taking all of this at face value. He may not have been there. He might have been there a lot earlier, or like you said, he could have been already been there.
And they could have been engaging in a lot of like, some, very, whatever recreational kinky stuff in the basement or whatever. And it just got carried away. Who knows? I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
it definitely feels like a cover up
oh,
by
for
the
sure.
guy.
Yeah, and what my thing is, regardless, I mean, whether it was consensual or not is insignificant to me.
Right.
I do think that there was some interaction that went too far. Maybe they thought he had died, and so they covered it up to make it look like an intruder.
Right.
Um, but I I guess you just don't know how other people you don't know what you would do. And I could not live. I don't even understand. This was Joe and Robert were supposedly good friends, and actually throughout the years, because Joe had been with Victor for so long, Victor was a friend too. You know what I mean? These are quote unquote friends. I just I I just find it so heartbreaking that they would just leave it at that, for his wife to never know what happened. And I don't know. I mean, I obviously it was a cover up. I mean, the intruder thing does not, the police never bought it. He had a 7-foot wall in the back of his house where the intruder supposedly came from. And so so the intruder is going to come in. Oh, by the way, these guys were rich, so they had all this high-tech electronic equipment. Robert had his wallet and his watch right on the nightstand. They didn't take that. So the intruder is coming in to what? Just kill this one guy
Yeah.
and clean up after himself. So, it's
Yeah.
just really frustrating because the police know it's not the truth, but they can't get to the truth and they can't hold anybody accountable. So they're scot free. I think that's a total like injustice and a tragedy that this nice guy was killed, whether it was accidental or what, and no one's held accountable. I just think that's so sad. And imagine how many times that is going on, how many other places that this is happening.
Yeah.
It's just very sad.
That is really sad. But
Yeah.
the other thing that I found very telling, just going back to some of the details, is you said that she filed a wrongful death suit and they settled out of court. And remember the last conversation we had
Yeah, I thought
is,
about you.
is that whenever there's a settle out of court, I heard um the funniest response. Someone was saying, "Oh, we just took the deal that the DA gave us because we didn't want to have to drag anyone through the court system. And I thought, well, that's a nice way of saying you're guilty of sin. If you're settling with someone out of court, you're basically saying, listen, let's make this case go away. The court
Mhm.
systems are glutted. There's a lot of, evidence out there. I'm probably as guilty as sin. I don't want to get put through the ringer. You don't want to get put through the ringer. This is, the memory of your loving husband. You don't want to have to be on the stand and have to sit through all this gory details. I'll tell you what, we'll give you $15 million because we're really rich and you will drop the charges and they'll file this in the vault of like cases that were settled because I was really rich and you are never going to sue me over this. Because the fact of the matter is if they had been found guilty of wrongful death, because hello, a dude turns up dead in your building, in your house, and it's just these three dudes just sitting around in white robes, no blood anywhere. You know what I mean? Like there would have been
It's
blood everywhere, everywhere.
yeah,
On your hands, on your white robes, and like you stopped everything and went and took a shower. Okay, guys, let's call 911 in 45 minutes, but let's all go take
exactly.
showers first. I mean, why weren't they scouring the bathrooms? Why weren't they scouring there's residual fluid
Yeah,
that is in pipes. Why weren't they unscrewing the pipes from under the sinks and from, pulling like samples of water from the plumbing so that they could take that in and have it tested? It's interesting. So I wonder if I think about that settlement. It's like, well, poor Kathy, obviously it's not going to bring her husband back. He's
yeah.
already gone. But maybe
Mhm.
the $15 million that she got, or however many millions of dollars that they settled out of court, because apparently these people are really rich, help soften the blow a little bit for the fact that her husband's never coming back. And
Yeah.
also, it also makes me wonder maybe she knew something like that her husband had confessed maybe he had extracurricular activities that he enjoyed with men before he had met her or before he had married her or who knows. Let's face it. I mean, even people who are in a happily married or happily in a happy couple or a happy throuple or whatever, even they might have questionable behavior. But I remember somebody saying to me once, like, whatever happens behind closed doors, as long as it's consenting adults and nobody's being taken advantage of and everybody is okay with what's happening, none of that stuff needs to be like, we don't have to drag it out and, hang it out to dry. Like, if everybody's consenting and it's safe behavior and it's people, all the parties are, in agreement, then get your kink on. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, who
Yeah.
cares?
Yeah, and the money is like it's not gonna change the situation from her. So
Yeah.
all the research I did, she really, really like went into a downward spiral after his death. Like she,
Oh,
like major depression. She couldn't go to work. She eventually pulled herself out of it, but it hit her really hard. They were really in love. Um, but yeah, so Joe was a lawyer, so he kind of knew how to work the system too, right? And you know,
right.
I'm sure he told them. I'm sure he was the leader in concocting a story and telling them how to act. And like when they went to the police station, they were all questioned separately, because just the impression I got from Victor, he seems very like when you listen to the 911 call, he's very emotional and very like freaked out. And he would have caved, I think, if Joe, I can see him coaching them and saying, no matter what, you do not deviate from this story about the intruder, no matter what they tell you, because they will try to make us turn on each other. You stick with that because that's what they did. And that's what got them out of it. It was like, unless somebody turns on and wants to speak and spill the beans, no one's ever going to know what happened.
Right.
And um yeah, so there was something I read about Joe, because he was uh his work was in the LGBTQ plus community, something about them not wanting to go after him, Yeah, I can't really remember, but it had something to do with the sexual orientation. And this was the other thing I wanted to say. They didn't go after it because of that. And I'm just going to throw this out there, but I think also because Robert Wone was Asian. I know I'm talking a lot about like race today, but I sorry, I do kind of believe that. Because the ratio of people, minorities to others, um, as far as the media is concerned, is very skewed. Minorities don't get the same attention in the media that others do. For
There's a
sure.
lot
Yeah.
of, yeah, there's a lot of stigma around, and I'm not saying that there aren't stigmas with Caucasian people or with, European descent people, but I just happen to know that like for cultures, especially for example, like let's say the Latino culture, there's so much machismo when it comes to like Latino men that there's also a huge stigma placed, I think, in a lot of different Latino subgroups, I mean, different Latin cultures. I can say for fact that we have close friends who are Mexican, and just the stereotypes that are brought up, when you talk about men in LGBTQ communities, there, it's difficult to break out of those when you're in very machismo cultures.
Hmm.
There's so much emphasis and importance placed on a man being a man and being manly and laying with, sleeping with so many women and, you know, proving his prowess as a virile man and
Hmm.
his prowess with women. And so it's very interesting. So I do wonder if like maybe, maybe he was an active participant in some kink and he wasn't able to be open and honest about it. And but I agree with you. I do feel like you know it's you know uh I think that it's too bad for members of LGBTQ plus community that there's those stigmas and also that it's not treated the same,
Hmm.
um and I hope that that can change. I feel like we're definitely headed towards more acceptance and more change, but at the same time I also feel like with that having been said, I feel like sometimes I'll read a news story or I'll see a headline and I'll feel like as much change and as much acceptance as there is out there, some people are really digging those heels in, really trying not to. So
Yeah. We still have a long way to go.
you really do. You really do.
Mm.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Wow, you did a lot of research on this one.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could go down a lot of rabbit holes on this because, but I just feel really sad for him and for his loved ones because it's just wrong.
I know this has nothing to do with this case, but I'm also reminded of Jeffrey Dahmer. Remember the remember he preyed specifically on underage Vietnamese men.
Yes. And do you remember when the one got away and the police, he ran, he was there.
To him.
Yes, I mean, it just makes me sick to my stomach. He was naked running down the street and somebody reported it and the police came and then Dahmer came out and he was like, "Oh no, this is my lover and we've just had a quarrel." And they fucking sent him back with him. Oh my God. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and that boy I think was 17. They should ask him for his ID. Come on now. I
Yeah,
gotta
well, he
say
deserved
that
it.
whenever I hear about um, police not treating a crime scene the way it's supposed to be treated, or whenever I hear about things not being done in a certain order when there is an order of operations that things to be have to be handled in, I often or even when I see like when they release those pictures where they're like the police have released a composite drawing what I always, and I know it's not funny, but I always think about when people ask me questions like, what was the person wearing or what were they doing? Or I can't remember if their hair was purple or blue. I can't
I
remember if they had glasses, if they had a mustache. if they had pubes stuck to their eyebrows. I mean, I swear to you, Cheryl, if they asked me for composite drawing, it would be a combination of like Cookie Monster, that guy who did Mana Mana on the Muppets, and like the dude who delivered my mail and the guy who I ordered pizza from. I mean, I can't remember. I love when people go, "Oh, you mean the lady with the glasses?" I'm all,
She
"Who?
wore glasses.
That lady wore glasses?" I'm all, "Where was I?" And they'll be
You
like,
know,
"I really like that sweatshirt she had on. What do you think she went to Stanford?" And I'm like, "She had a sweatshirt on?" Like, I don't even.
no, I am as much as I'm into true crime. I have said that I would make a terrible witness.
Yeah.
I don't know heights. First of all, don't ask me to give you height and weight of anyone. I'm just like,
Right.
I don't know. It's taller than me. I mean, like, I don't know. Yeah,
Right.
I'm the same way.
Well,
Oh
and the
my
other
god,
thing is every person has a different way of looking at someone.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
remember one time saying to my mom, we were in the car and this girl walked in front and I go, "That is the cutest outfit that girl has on." And my mom goes, "What, you mean that chubby fat girl that just walked out?" I'm like, "Jesus, mom, she looked
Oh,
adorable." I mean, I was all, are we looking at two different people? I
oh,
mean,
yeah. That's what you saw. You saw the outfit, and
yeah.
your mom saw an overweight girl.
And
Yeah.
another time, this girl was crossing in front of the car. We were stopped at a stoplight, and I was sitting next to my husband. And this girl walks across the crosswalk, and she's pushing a bicycle. And it's a warm summer's day. She's got like, booty shorts or something, where half of her bottom's like hanging out of the shorts. And she's got like a little tube top or crop top or whatever the hell kids are wearing nowadays. She looked like she was probably 22 or 23, whatever. She's walking by pushing this bicycle. And this was a while ago, by the way. This was like within probably the first 5 years that we were married. And I go, "Oh, you like he's watching or she walks across the crosswalk." And I go, "Oh, you like what you're seeing over there?" I'm like, which part do you like? The booty shorts with the crop top?" And he goes, "That's an Italian handmade frame. There's only six of those made in the country and then in all of the world. And like one guy wrecked one at the train 17 years ago, and his name was blah 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 blah." And I was just like, "Oh my god!" First of all, I felt like a giant asshole, but also I was just like, I should have known he was looking at the bicycle. What?
I
What?
didn't know that wasn't a cover. He just gave you all the details. Oh my god,
Well,
that's hilarious.
he definitely would be able to give all the details about the bicycle.
Oh, that's hilarious. That is hilarious. Oh gosh.
Well,
Well,
it's a really, really big crime. We're almost out of time.
yeah. Well, thank you for letting me share
Love
that.
saying that. Can you tell I love saying that?
Yes.
Yeah, that was great. If anybody has any insight on this, obviously, or if anybody has any comments or maybe some commentary, feel free to let us know. We always love, going in another direction or hearing somebody else's take on it. But yeah,
Yeah. I would love to hear the other theories.
absolutely. Anyway, until our next podcast.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, stay safe out there. Lock those doors and windows.
Just lock your doors. All right.
All right. Don't move to DC.
Oh my god. Bye.
Bye. Bye.